It's been almost a decade since Barack Obama left the Oval Office for the final time. He may have been the most powerful man in the world back then, but these days he can barely get a text back from his daughters. When the Obama family left the White House, they didn't go far at all. They promptly rented a mansion in Washington, D.C.'s Callaghan neighborhood, which is fairly close to their old place on Pennsylvania Avenue, with the White House just around the bend. Their new digs had some pretty high-profile neighbors, like first daughter Ivanka Trump and former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. In fact, the Obamas weren't even the first political family to live in their new home. Bill Clinton's press secretary, Joe Lockhart, once owned the same building. While they weren't the first family to stay in Washington after leaving the White House, they were the first to do it since Woodrow Wilson. And just because they already knew the area didn't mean the move wasn't an adjustment.
It was odd coming down a different street and parking through a different set of barricades because we still had barricades.
It's hard to say if the Obamas went right back to living a normal suburban life after the move. After all, the Secret Service was still guarding them. But small details like a functioning front door played a big part in making them feel at home. They eventually bought the place for a cool $8.1 million and continued to live there while their youngest daughter, Sasha, finished high school. No one ever said being president was easy. So as Barack's second term came to an end, the Obamas made it very clear they were going to take some time to themselves.
We're going to rest a second. We're going to take a breather. You know, as I told all of our staff here, it's time for us to tap out for a second.
Just days after Trump's first inauguration, the whole family shot over to Palm Springs. Then billionaire Richard Branson invited Barack and Michelle to enjoy some well-earned relaxation in the British Virgin Islands. They spent 10 days relaxing and kite surfing on a private island. And then Barack booked a month-long stay at a private resort on the Tetiaroa Atoll in French Polynesia. If those fancy names don't drive home how nice that place is, the resort was built on land once leased to legendary actor Marlon Brando. A few months later, the Obamas were still on a traveling spree. Barack and Michelle reportedly had a 6-day stay in Tuscany, Italy. Then the whole family took a trip to Indonesia. Barack had spent a lot of time there as a kid and returned to go river rafting, stroll through rice fields, and take in the local culture at museums and temples. Malia Obama graduated high school just months before her dad's second term in the White House wrapped up. Shortly before she graduated, the White House announced that she'd be enrolling at Harvard like her parents before her. But she took a gap year first. In her year away from school, Malia set her sights on the film business. She attended the Sundance Film Festival in January 2017 and worked as an intern for the Weinstein Company in New York. She finally began her career as a history major at Harvard in August 2017, and the whole family helped her move into her dorm. As Michelle donned rubber gloves and cleaned her daughter's bathroom, and Sasha quietly folded her sister's clothes and made the bed, an emotional Barack built a lamp.
I was basically useless.
Malia soon settled into life at Harvard and eventually graduated in 2021. The Obamas have never been shy about their love for music, and they have a particularly special relationship with what some might call the first couple of hip-hop, Beyoncé Knowles and Jay-Z. Barack and Michelle have a long history with the Carters, and it's no surprise the former First Family has attended some of their shows. In 2018, the Obamas were seen at multiple stops on Beyoncé and Jay-Z's On the Run 2 tour. In mid-July, Michelle, Sasha, and Malia were all at the tour's Paris date. And Michelle was seen dancing right beside Beyoncé's mom, Tina. The tour came back stateside later that month, and both Michelle and Barack attended another date in Landover, Maryland. Supporting the Carters is the least the Obamas could do for them, as both Jay-Z and Beyoncé were vehement Obama supporters while Barack was in office. When Barack first assumed the presidency, Beyoncé serenaded him and Michelle as they had their first dance at the neighborhood ball. When Barack was eyeing a second term, the stars held a fundraiser at Jay-Z's 40/40 Club. The duo charged a staggering $40,000 entry fee and managed to raise $4 million at the event. Barack was quick to deliver some kind words to the Carters to thank them for their support, stating, "Beyoncé couldn't be a better role model for our daughters because she carries herself with such class and poise and has so much talent." The then president also joked about how much he and Jay-Z had in common, as they were both raising daughters and had wives that people liked even more than them. After her work as First Lady was done, Michelle got back to writing. She'd already released one book while Barack was in office, and her memoir Becoming hit shelves in November 2018. Michelle used the book to share details about different phases of her life, from childhood to motherhood to her time in the White House. It gets extremely personal and doesn't shy away from highlighting some of the less glamorous experiences she's had.
Every part of our stories, no matter how small or simple, has meaning and value.
Within the first 15 days of its release, Becoming sold 2 million copies in North America and was flying off the shelves worldwide. It also earned her first Grammy for Best Spoken Word Album in 2019. While speaking on Oprah's 2020 Vision Tour, Michelle stated that she'd believed much of the book's success had to do with the fact that she told a relatable story and didn't shy away from addressing hardships.
I embrace every aspect of who I am because, as I've said, I like my story. I like all the highs and lows and the bumps in between. Yeah.
In 2019, Michelle went on a nationwide book tour to promote Becoming. And while she'd been out of the White House for several years at that point, she still had enough star power to bring in television hosts Jimmy Kimmel, Conan O'Brien, and Stephen Colbert as moderators. It didn't take her too long to follow Becoming up with yet another book. The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times came out in November 2022. Though he might hesitate to call himself a writer, by the time he wrapped up his presidency, Barack Obama had also published 3 books and had 2 Grammys for Best Spoken Word Album of his own. His first book, Dreams from My Father, A Story of Race and Inheritance, came out over a decade before he ran for president. He followed that up with 2006's The Audacity of Hope, Thoughts on Reclaiming the American Dream, and the illustrated children's book, Of Thee I Sing, A Letter to My Daughters. Then, 4 years after leaving the White House, he published his memoir, A Promised Land. In it, Barack details many aspects of his life, including his quest to find an identity, the highlights of his presidency, and his take on the global financial crisis. Unsurprisingly, the book topped the bestsellers list and sold 3.3 million copies in just the first month it was on shelves. But Barack wasn't done yet. The following year, he published Renegades, Born in the USA, which he wrote with singer and fellow slow talker Bruce Springsteen. The duo first crossed paths in 2008, and they've had a tight bond ever since. They named the book after their podcast of the same name, and they used both outlets to discuss everything from art and music to the American experience. Unsurprisingly, the book, written by a former president and one of the biggest names in music, quickly became another addition to the growing list of Obama bestsellers.
I'm basketball fan Barack Obama.
Barack's love for basketball dates back to his days at the Punahou School in Honolulu, where he actually lobbied with his coach to get himself and a few of his teammates more playing time. He's often shown his passion for the sport by showing up to NBA and NCAA games and has proven his knowledge of the game in interviews and on social media. He even coached Sasha's 4th grade team during his first term as president. In 2021, he found a way to combine diplomacy with his respect for the sport by becoming a strategic partner for the NBA's Africa division. In a statement to the league, he celebrated the NBA for the way it's given the United States the opportunity to connect with countries all over the world, and praised its players for using their notoriety to support African communities.
In Africa, basketball has the power to promote opportunity, wellness, equality, and empowerment across the continent.
4 years later, the league he helped bring to life is still going strong. After Malia graduated from Harvard, she got about as far from Cambridge as possible by pursuing a career in film and television in LA. She's already started collaborating with A-listers like Donald Glover, so we'd say she made the right move. Apparently, Sasha agrees because she transferred from the University of Michigan to the University of Southern California and moved in with her big sister. Malia graduated in 2023, and since then, the Obama sisters have taken the LA party scene by storm. They've been spotted hanging out in some of LA's trendiest areas and have attended events with popular artists like Drake and Destin Conrad. And while they're clearly living busy lives, they've managed to maintain a pretty typical family dynamic with their parents. Michelle told People magazine she had to play it cool when she found out Sasha and Malia were moving in together because she was afraid if she got too enthusiastic about the idea, they wouldn't go through with it. In classic dad fashion, Barack is the most active contributor to the Obama family group chat. And while both Sasha and Malia seem to have good heads on their shoulders, that doesn't stop their parents from worrying about them as they navigate adult life in this crazy world. Michelle's kids might not always listen to her, but millions of other people have made it very clear that they want to hear what the former First Lady has to say. And in March 2025, she appeased those fans by launching the IMO podcast with her brother, Craig Robinson. Michelle used a promo for the show's first episode to reflect on her relationship with her brother, They've remained close their entire lives and have been there for each other all the way from their childhood in Chicago to the present day. She wrote, "For over 6 decades, we've been each other's sounding board. And now we can't wait to be yours too." In the past few months, they've hosted numerous high-profile guests and had some very fun and very serious conversations. When comedy legends Damon and Marlon Wayans paid the podcast a visit, they discussed everything from the Wayans family's rise to fame to parenting transgender kids. When Tina Knowles made an appearance, she and Michelle compared notes about everything from motherhood to running a business. Funny enough, as of summer 2025, Barack himself has yet to show up on the podcast. And if a former president married to one of the hosts can't land a slot, the team at IMO must be pretty darn selective about their guests. Launching IMO wasn't the only reason Michelle made headlines in 2025. In January, a lot of people noticed she wasn't at Jimmy Carter's funeral or Donald Trump's inauguration. Unfortunately, the public took those absences as the latest evidence that her marriage was on the rocks. Rumors that Barack and Michelle were headed for divorce really heated up back in August 2024, when an old rumor that Barack and actor Jennifer Aniston had had an affair started making the rounds again. And while Aniston was flattered to be affiliated with the former president, she made it clear on Jimmy Kimmel Live that she'd only met Barack once, and they certainly weren't involved.
That is absolutely untrue.
The fact that Michelle wasn't at Barack's side in January only added fuel to the fire. But now that her podcast is up and running, she's had ample opportunity to address those rumors head on. Unsurprisingly, she was pretty outraged that the public would jump to such serious conclusions when all she did was take some time for herself.
My decision to make choices at the beginning of this year that suited me were met with such ridicule and criticism.
Judging by that reaction, Michelle and Barack are doing just fine. And while no one in the family is currently in a political office, we're sure the Obamas will continue to seriously influence culture for decades to come.